And from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center, let's take one last look at that traffic and weather for you right in on this Thursday morning. A couple of different accidents to report. One at Dutch Fork Road and Route Schmetz Road. Another one at Edgewater near I-77. Another one at Fernandina near Piney Grove. Today, expect some more thunderstorms throughout the day. High of 79. Tomorrow, isolated storms as well with high of 81. And still some storms on Saturday with a high of 85. It is the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. This is the early game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you. Filling in today for Jack Veltri is our guy, Joe Machika. Lots to dive into over the course of the next hour as it's finally draft day. I've said this many times over the past couple of weeks. I feel like we've been talking nonstop about the NFL draft when it comes to the stories of Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Shedeur Sanders. And I am very much ready to finally see who's going to be selected tonight at their respective spots so we can finally move on to talking about what these guys are going to be doing with their new teams instead of, hey, where's this guy going to go? How far is Shedeur Sanders going to drop? Is Travis Hunter going to go to this team or that team? Joe, I'm just ready to finally see the draft take place.
Yeah, Tyler, tonight's the night, finally. The NFL draft is upon us, and we finally, get to hear everyone's name called and get to see who slides and who doesn't, right? That's also the fun part, see who was overrated and what teams think what guys were overrated and what teams think some guys are, underrated and move up for. So best time of year, Tyler, it's the time that, regular fans get to call professional franchises, dumb for making picks and stuff. And so, best time of the year for sure. And appreciate you having me on this morning.
And for those of us fans of teams that are not in good places right now, you can either come away from this weekend feeling very optimistic about the future or feeling very, distraught about what your team has done over the course of the next couple days, saying, well, we're never going to win anything.
Yeah, exactly. No, like this draft, I mean, Tyler, for some team or for some fans, right? Like we're so far away from football. This can determine their whole offseason, right? How they feel during the whole offseason. So yeah, I mean the draft, it's always fun. Tends to be more of a mundane thing, but again, it's all about the takes and see, what NFL team is smart, which NFL team is dumb, and you go from there.
We'll dive into plenty of draft things over the course of the next hour, but it is 9 o'clock. We got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. Have you been hurt in the car or at work? Call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. Well, I always enjoy hearing Sandstorm, but over the course of the next 3 days, you're going to be hearing this quite a lot. I never get sick of hearing that. I know now they've expanded it to the NBA and WNBA drafts, but I don't know, there's just something that it makes the hairs on your arms stand up a little bit, right?
Yeah, I'm with it, Tyler. I remember ESPN was looking into it a couple weeks ago, and they said when the first draft that they brought that out, it didn't happen for the first 8 picks, and then all of a sudden pick number 8, there's this jingle, and then it never goes back to the old way again. So I'm a fan of it. I think it's what makes a draft a draft. And when you hear that and get ready to hear your name called, it makes the whole experience that much more special.
Yeah, and look, like you said, we're in the middle of this long, cold off season of football, and we're, as a society, so starved for any football-related content. We sink our teeth into just about anything that happens. Obviously had free agency a couple weeks ago. You're going to have the schedule release coming up, I believe, in May. So having 3 straight days of tons of content of draft stuff is very exciting. And, I don't know. I guess working in sports radio, I'm more excited for the draft than I think the average person, because, again, it gives us content to talk about, and obviously excited to see where these South Carolina players go. But I don't know. It's just kind of like new beginnings for so many players and so many teams when it comes to the NFL. And obviously the questions every single year of, hey, is this when the Browns finally turn it around, depending on who they draft, and teams that are routinely at the bottom of the NFL? I don't know. It's exciting to see what happens over the next couple of days and how that sets the table for the future of the league.
Yeah, certainly, Tyler. And I mean, if you look at the case-to-case basis, right? I mean, at least with my Chicago Bears, like Caleb Williams changed the trajectory of the franchise, no matter who was in the leadership position, right? Like we had Ryan Poles and all that, and he made the right decision and everything like that. But I mean, you still had to fire Matt Eberflus and do all that. But yeah, the draft, I mean, setting yourself up with players, especially those first-round talent guys, the guys that are probably going to make their way onto the field for your team sooner rather than later, since they're a first-round draft pick. But yeah, the one player can change the trajectory of a franchise, or so it may seem in April. So that's what's exciting about this, Tyler. And again, like as you mentioned, there's not a whole lot else going on, so you might as well get hyped for a bunch of people hearing their names called up there in Green Bay, of all places. I
was gonna say, this year's draft being in Green Bay, as they continue to bounce around a little bit. I know that kind of sticks in your craw a little bit more because you're a Bears fan, but I mean, would you go to the draft in Green Bay? Because like everybody has Green Bay as a bucket list. Like, don't want to see a game at Lambeau, and you would technically be in Lambeau Field, but you're not watching a game being played. You're watching guys get selected.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, Tyler. As like a White Sox fan, I feel the same way about the Cubs. Right, Wrigley's cool as all get up. Right, like it's one of the cooler venues in baseball. So I feel the same way about Green Bay. I haven't been to a game at Lambeau, but the neighborhood and everything, and how they ride their bikes to camp and all that stuff is super cool. So I'm about the worst on rivalries, right? I love the venue because it's just that.
I do think it's funny, and I saw a tweet yesterday from Mike Greenberg. He was having like breakfast with Booger McFarland. He said, yeah, we're in this little diner, and I asked for like an almond milk latte, and they laughed at me or something like that. So I do think it's funny that, compared to Kansas City and Detroit, and I think they had one in Vegas a couple years ago, you're used to being in these really big cities that can kind of handle something. Nashville handles something like the NFL draft. For people that don't know, like Green Bay is literally a neighborhood. Like it is outside of Lambeau Field. There isn't a whole lot there in terms of it just being another Wisconsin small town. So I'm intrigued to see, one, the setup, but two, just how like these national talking heads handle being kind of in the middle of just an average, ordinary blue-collar town for the next couple of days.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think just watching, again, Green Bay's so, like, the only big thing in that town really is the massive football stadium.
Yeah. Which, again, is, like, right behind, like, a neighborhood of houses. Like, there are houses that are literally in the parking lot of Lambeau Field.
Yep. Yeah, step off your front porch and get Sunday Night Football. Like, that's usually, like, one of my favorite, views that they give from Lambeau on Sunday Night Football and stuff. So I agree. Like it's literally a neighborhood. It's a small town in Wisconsin. We drove through it when we went. So like, yeah, it's just very small town Wisconsin.
One of the great traditions of the draft is obviously booing Roger Goodell. So he walks out there, hey, welcome to the NFL draft. Everyone boos him, and then because he usually announces most of the first round picks, you get in some of the later rounds, you'll have guests and former players and all this kind of stuff, and kids with charities going up there and announcing it. But Goodell usually gets a pretty hefty amount of boos. Are you in on that? Is that something you would do if you were at the draft yourself?
Sure, probably a little bit, just for the heck of it, right? Because it is tradition, and it is the only time that fans get a chance to let the commissioner hear their mind.
True.
Will it ever go back to non-booing? I don't think so. I think there's just so many rules and regulations that you can make for him to get booed and stuff like that. There's always going to be an unpopular opinion.
I don't think it's ever going to change for Goodell. I think he's in his last contract as being the commissioner, if I remember correctly. Yep. So we'll have a new one in however many years, and whenever that guy has his first draft, I'm sure I don't know if he maybe had in the past, but I do think the booing is very funny.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tyler. I'm with you. I think the booing's just a nice touch. I think at this point he's come to embrace it. So it's good. It's good for the fans again to have as much expression as possible. Especially in an atmosphere like that, it makes the whole atmosphere and experience better.
I will say he almost kind of won me over during the COVID draft, where he was essentially like in his basement, sitting in he's sitting in a recliner with like a robe on, announcing these draft picks, and like you saw his personality a little bit more in that one, and I was like, all right, maybe he's not that bad of a guy after all.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the grand scheme of or the grand image of Roger Goodell is one that tends to get washed up with the typical Vince McMahon WWE, right? The commissioner, oh boy, here we go, kind of mindset. But yeah, Goodell. I mean, he's always been kind of an even keel guy, and right had some rulings that may not have been in too much favor, but yeah. I don't know. I think he's certainly earning the praise, and maybe the booze will disappear one day, or maybe we'll have to see if we get somebody new in there and the booze happen to disappear.
Well, it should be a very exciting draft coming up tonight. I did see this nugget yesterday. Barring a last-minute trade, every team will go into the draft with their original first-round pick for the first time in the common draft era that began back in 1967. So everything's looking pretty straightforward right now. And look, there's going to be trades. I think we're in for a lot of chaos once the clock starts tonight because there have not been any moves being made up to this point. So this could go in a lot of different directions. Should be fun TV tonight.
Yeah, I agree, Tyler. That's what I was thinking too. I mean, there's been no trades, and that first round pick stat is crazy. I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think all hell is going to break loose as soon as we, get through, or get into the first round and everything, and all the trades, and where's Aaron Rodgers going to end up? A lot of questions that are going to be answered tonight. So. Should be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And again, got a lot of Gamecocks that are going to be hearing their names called over the next couple of days. We'll get into Nicky Moore coming up next because he's the one that I think we can say with a lot of confidence is going to be drafted tonight. We'll see what happens with TJ Sanders and these other guys, but I think we're going to hear at least one Gamecock's name get announced coming up tonight. It's always cool and especially considering the fact that, we obviously cover this team and are close to the program and all that kind of stuff, to have guys that you feel like right? That are getting the opportunity to go and live their dreams, and especially being a part of the first round and get all that money and stuff like that. Obviously, last year was Xavier Legette, and did he have the greatest rookie year? Not necessarily. And he's still got time to improve and all that kind of stuff, but obviously just really cool to see South Carolina get represented in the first round like we expect to see tonight.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And I mean, you mentioned, we feel like we know these guys, like, right? A fun story about draft week and the whole NFL combine and everything. Like before we get to break here, but like I was flying home for spring break one time, and sure enough, in the Charlotte airport, I ran into Zach Pickens. He had just gotten done with his combine. And so Zach Pickens was flying home. Saw him in the Charlotte airport. I'm like, "What's up, Zach? How we doing?" All this stuff. And, I just asked him, I'm like, who did you feel like, your interview or your best interview was? And he's like, Chicago, man. I think I'm going to be a Bear. And I'm like, you know what? That's awesome. Like, I'm headed back to Midwest right now. And then sure enough, a couple weeks later, Zach Pickens is a Bear. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see that. And like, it's especially for Zach too, good kid, really, fun to cover. Coming through South Carolina, really easygoing. So to see him find a home in Chicago, it was cool. Full circle for sure.
Yeah, and again, we got an opportunity to maybe set a record for the amount of Gamecocks getting their names called this weekend, which again, we'll dive into that and a lot more coming up here in the next couple of minutes. It is the Extra Point. It's our head, Joe Machica, filling in for Jack Beltry today on your Draft Day Thursday here on The Game.
Everyone knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands with their guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. They're hard to beat when you need a new system. But did you know they also have great deals for repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're strapped for cash, AAA Heating and Air can help. They'll get your repairs done with payment options for up to 12 months and also no credit check required. That's right. So if you are the homeowner, all you need is a valid bank account. That's it. That's all you need. So don't wait. Call AAA Heating and Air today and get your comfort back on track. AAA Heating and Air, comfort you can trust.
Sooners are down 14 points to Carolina in the first ever meeting. Hawkins, freshman, takes it in the pocket, gets in as he throws it into coverage again, and picked off again at the 40 of Carolina down the near sideline. That's E-Man Worry towards the end zone. Are you kidding me? Touchdown Carolina. Touchdown Nick E-Man Worry. Pick six. Dylan Stewart with the pressure. E-Man Worry runs it into the end zone for his second pick six on the season.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Joe Machika hanging out with you on this draft day Thursday. That, of course, was the call from the Gamecock Radio Network. Todd Ellis there back in October where Nicky Minwari had the pick six early in the Oklahoma game to make it 21-0, essentially sealing that game for South Carolina. One of many highlights he had not only this past season, but over his entire tenure here at South Carolina. And again, he goes into tonight projected to be the first safety off the board, likely to go somewhere in the late half of the first round. But regardless, expect to be a first rounder, which is obviously a high honor. And again, for a guy local from Irmo, very cool to see his dreams getting set to come true tonight.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. You talk about a freak athlete and somebody that deserves to go in the first round of the NFL draft. Look no further than Nicky Minwari. This guy, he can play. Yes, you mentioned he's probably going to be the first safety off the board. But I was talking with somebody earlier this week, and they were telling me that he tested out in the highest percentile for three positions, at safety, at linebacker, and at corner, which is ridiculous, right? He's a freak of nature. So, again, good to see a South Carolina kid, especially a local one in Irmo, going to the NFL draft. I think the ceiling is really, really high for Nicky Minwari, and certainly going to be a first rounder tonight, I would think. Yeah,
look, his measurables are obviously crazy. 6'3", 220. You don't have a lot of safeties that measure out that way, and he had the ability. I know there's a lot of conversation at one point in his South Carolina career of, hey, move him down to linebacker because he's big enough, maybe put on a couple of extra pounds to be able to do that, but obviously ended up coming into his own in safety, and he was a guy that got thrust into the job very quickly. The first game in his freshman season against Georgia State, a handful of snaps in, and obviously never really left the field from there. And again, by the end of it, he ended up being the best overall player on that defense. Obviously, Dylan Stewart still has a couple more years left, and he could end up being a generational type of talent here at South Carolina. But obviously, Nicky Minwari held things down to the back end and benefited a lot from Dylan Stewart and those guys up front getting the pass rush they did last year, because that allowed the DBs not have to stay in coverage quite as long and set Nicky Minwari up for several of those pick sixes, including one that got called back against LSU that he had last year.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. He's just, a freak in the defensive backfield, really can cover, sideline to sideline. And it's going to be, really interesting to see who goes and gets him. Like, what style of NFL team, needs a guy like this to patrol their defensive backfield, right? I think he can make a difference on, a team that's competing, right? We've seen, guys slip to the Chiefs, really, really talented players slip to the Chiefs or some or the Bills of that nature, start competing immediately. And it's like, how the heck did they end up with that guy? It's like, well, all the other teams at the top were worried about, people to build the franchise around. Well, meanwhile, you got guys like Nicky Minwari that are sliding down. So it'll be interesting to see who picks him up. But again, the mock drafts have him, kind of around those playoff teams. So it'll be really interesting.
Going back to him at the NFL Combine, where, again, he tested, out the roof in so many categories that really turned a lot of heads. He was actually on the post-game show yesterday with Jay and Elijah and was talking a little bit about going to the Combine and testing as well as he did.
Yeah, man, for sure. Going into the draft, going into the Combine, pre-Combine, I was already seeing my name, I was hearing late first round, early second, seeing a couple mocks. I don't really pay attention to the mocks, but I seen one or two mocks where my name was last or last 5 picks. So going into the Combine, I was expecting to just handle business there, honestly. Going into it, I was real confident, real sure in my ability. Going into it, I knew exactly what was going to happen as far as testing-wise. So I was probably the most confident dude in the building. I remember I was doing my formal visits at the Combine, formal visits with the teams and stuff, going in their draft meeting rooms or whatever. But I was telling the coaches, I'm finna, jump this. I'm finna broad this right here. And I'm finna run this 40. And they were all surprised, there's no way you do that, man. But so I had something out. I had a plan for the Combine, and I think I executed it well. My name shot up to the draft. My name skyrocketed on a lot of teams' draft boards after that. And then, plus when you're watching my film, it's just a great thing to see. So,
and like you said, that performance at the Combine solidified himself as first-round pick. There was some debate of, okay, is he late first-round, early second-round type of thing? And, when it comes to the draft, you shouldn't go all in on production on the field, but you also shouldn't go all in on what happens in the Combine either. It has to be a combination. of the two, and one kind of supplements the other. And for Nicky Amilwari, very productive on the field, obviously. Then he goes out there and puts up ridiculous numbers in pretty much every single category at the combine. Is that he set surprise just about every NFL team that he talked to is like, okay, yeah, this guy is a freak. We got to get him on our team. And looking at the rundown of teams that are in need of a safety, pretty much when you start at 13 from Miami and go all the way down, just about every single team could be in the market for his services. I've seen, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Buffalo. Those are some kind of the popular picks of places that he could end up landing. And obviously, the good thing about being in the back half of the first round is you're going to teams in at least decent situations. Yep. When you get drafted in the first 10 picks, you're likely, unless somebody's traded or whatever, you're likely going to an organization that has a long way to go in terms of being successful. Man, if you landed at a place like Baltimore, and he talked about yesterday, he wants to either play with or play against Lamar Jackson. You could end up on the team with him and immediately be on a contender in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Tyler, I mean, you mentioned Miami at 13. I mean, pair him back up with Cam Smith, too. Yep. How awesome would that be? Because Miami's building a little something secondary there. They just got rid of Jalen Ramsey. I believe they did not re-sign him. So, that'd be huge. And there's a lot of teams, like you mentioned, right after 13 that are there. So it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. And, I agree with you. I think, as you mentioned, too, like, the way he was able to go out and blow everyone out of the water in the combine just solidified himself as a first rounder. Like, it's like this kid is going in the first round. He's not going to slip to the second, because if he does, that means all of the teams are like, there's something else that we don't know about that's going on or something like that. But yeah, Nick's combine was insane. Like, was able to go out there and do everything he said he was going to do too, which also holds more weight for these NFL teams. So, blowing them out of the water is one thing, but then being able to do it after you said what you were about to do, extra stuff there. So, wizardry from Nicky Amilwari.
And I know there was the deal of him sitting out the second half of the bowl game, and that was controversial at the time, but I think everything's been smoothed over since then, lack of communication, all that kind of stuff. But by all indications from his time here at South Carolina, he was never a problem, didn't have any issues, wasn't bad in the locker room or anything like that. And again, local guy from just up the road in Irmo, like, he just seemed like a good kid that's a good athlete that played obviously well here at South Carolina, that there's no reason why he should suddenly slide and say, oh no, why is he falling in the second round?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, as you mentioned, sitting out the second half of the bowl game, sure. But I think that's gone, again, because of the root of the issue just being communication, and it was always part of the plan. It wasn't like, him quitting on his team at halftime or something like that. Certainly lessons to blow with that as well. And, the other guy that did it during the college football season is going to go number 1 overall.
That's right.
If you look at it. So, yeah, like, it's really not that much to look into. And as you mentioned, no other problems here at South Carolina as well. As far as we know, pretty good kid, homegrown, was able to represent the state and the big block C well.
And I went back and looked last night, because again, South Carolina has had plenty of guys drafted, plenty of guys go on to very successful NFL careers. We honored Alshon Jeffrey the other year, and obviously he's won a Super Bowl and all those kind of things. But being a first rounder is very unique. In the history of South Carolina football, there have been 16 first rounders, the most recent, of course, being Xavier Legette a season ago. So it is still very rarefied air to be a part of that group that can say you went in the first round of the NFL draft. That, again, by all indications, we expect Nicky Amilwari to join tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Very rare air for sure, Tyler. And, again, being drafted in the first round, it puts you in an elite company for just your state as well. Being from the state of South Carolina, being able to, play football at the flagship institution in Columbia, establishes his legacy. And, being a first round draft pick would only add to that as Nick continues to build, and a lot of other guys too, Cal Kennard as well, a lot of other Gamecocks as well, looking to build on their legacy as well. But Nicky Amilwari with prime position to continue to add to his name.
We'll see where he ends up coming up tonight. We'll obviously break down that new home for him coming up tomorrow once we know where he is headed. We'll talk more draft, including how confident you should be in your team's ability to draft correctly. And we'll look at this from the perspective of an Atlanta and a Chicago fan coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Joe Machika hanging out with you on your draft day Thursday here on The Game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Joe Machiki hanging out with you on your Thursday, talking all things NFL draft, with first round coming up tonight at 8 o'clock on ESPN, ABC, and the NFL Network. And if you've turned on ESPN at any point this week, they've got this big countdown clock, so you know the exact second the draft starts. And looking at it right now, 10 hours, 26 minutes, and 7 seconds. And again, I'm just ready for it to get here. We've been talking in circles about the same 3 to 4 guys. Hey, where is he going to go? Number 1 overall pick. Like, I just want to see it so we can finally talk about where they're actually going.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, Tyler. And likely Cam Ward, the first name off the board, going to Tennessee. So I wonder how long it'll take Tennessee to get the pick in. Yeah,
that's another thing. I brought this up yesterday. I'm like, especially for a team like Tennessee that said, yeah, we're going to take the number 1 pick. We've known forever it's going to be Cam Ward. Why do you use the whole 10 minutes? Or, why do you have to use 7 of those minutes? You know what the deal is. I imagine you've probably already called Cam Ward before the clock even started. Why does Goodell have to leave the stage? He can go up there, hey, welcome to the draft. Oh, by the way, the Tennessee Titans on the clock are picking Cam Ward, quarterback Miami.
Yeah, Tyler, we've all got time, right? We've all got places to be, and in reality, we don't. We're watching the NFL draft, but it's one of those things. For the sake of the speed of this thing, move it along. If you got your pick already, let us know. Send the commissioner up there with a couple at a time. Let him rattle off 1, 2, 3. It'd be pretty cool.
And look, the first round of the draft takes 3.5, 4 hours anyway. And I get it. As you're getting later into the first round and guys come off the board and teams have to adjust their draft boards and all that kind of stuff, yeah, sure, take your time. But, Cam Ward's going to go 1. Travis Hunter likely going to go 2. Those are very easy and obvious picks. We don't need to waste a lot of time on that, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either, Tyler. And again, I like Travis Hunter going 2. Certainly a number 1 overall talent, but the Titans need a quarterback, so he's going number 2.
Yeah, and again, we'll kind of break down where those guys end up coming up tomorrow once we know their ultimate destinations. I saw this yesterday. The Action Network conducted a fan survey about teams' confidence levels in their front office and their ability to draft correctly. And the question was, how confident are you in your NFL team's front offices, your team heads into the draft? 69% of fans said they were competent. 15% of fans said they were unconfident, and 16% said neither. So roughly about 2/3 of fans are feeling confident in their ability for their team to draft well coming up tonight. But I look at teams like the Titans, I look at teams like the Browns that have been kind of in the doldrums of the NFL for a while now, especially the Browns. I imagine those fan bases have almost 0% confidence in their team's ability to draft correctly.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. You look at the Jets, right? Teams like that, that have just been, consistently picking at the top of the draft. I have reason to believe that, the fan bases aren't looking forward to see who they get. But also, tonight can be a night of, panic for them, if you will, because again, they draft the wrong guy. We've seen that before, and just, poor decisions from this front office. It's very easy to fumble a draft, Tyler. It's very hard to run all 7 rounds and get exactly who you need out of it. But you got to find the middle ground. You got to draft a good amount of players, a couple good players, a couple bad players, and you're through.
So the breakdown of the survey lists its top 5 least confident fan bases based on the people that they surveyed. Jets come in at number 1 with a 41% unconfidence rate. Browns at number 2, 35%. The Cowboys at number 3, Dolphins at number 4, and Indianapolis Colts at number 5 as the least confident fan bases according to Action Network's survey.
It's pretty good. I would have thought that both of our teams would have been in there, but I guess with recent stuff and now recently for the Falcons, you guys have had the Michael Penix thing.
Which in the end it ended up being a good thing they got him because Kirk Cousins ended up not being able to throw a football to save his life.
Yeah, exactly. So, I feel like Falcons fans aren't as mad about that as they were on draft night, I guess. But, it's the Colts kind of surprised me a little bit. But,
I think a lot of that has to do with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. A lot of fans didn't necessarily want him, which I don't understand. But, it's interesting to see Indianapolis so high up there. But interesting list for sure.
The Cowboys are a funny one to me because, again, this is a team that outside this past year, and I know Dak got hurt, so didn't have a great season, but under Mike McCarthy, they were routinely winning 10, 11 games and making the playoffs. They just couldn't get very far once they got into the playoffs, obviously. So, the fact that, and I guess it's because Jerry Jones and he makes stupid decisions a lot, but to have them in the top 5 of least competent fan bases is actually kind of funny.
Yeah, I agree. And especially because of how, like, America's team, they've right, like the Cowboy brand has been. And, I mean, you look at that franchise has a lot more wrong with it than just, like, the draft. I think they've got some curtains to figure out over there in Jerry's world. But
Literally.
yeah, like, it just goes to show you just how things are in Dallas right now. Like the fan base doesn't really trust the ownership and everything like that. And America's team is starting to, crumble from within. And, again, it's kind of shocking when you have that much kind of cash flow and that much support and you're as big of a brand as the Dallas Cowboys are.
So on the other side of things, the top 5 most confident fan bases, you have the Chargers, the Lions, the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Rams. And, of course, those are all teams that were in the playoffs a season ago. The Chargers, which they're tied with the Lions at 91%, I think that's interesting, and that so much has to do with Jim Harbaugh because I think he's respected as one of the best football minds out there today. Obviously, year number 1 back in the NFL with the Chargers, got to the playoffs before getting bounced by the Texans there. But I think there's a lot of belief in people out there in LA that they're going to be successful for a long time to come with Harbaugh at the helm, and he's going to be able to make good decisions in the draft coming up this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I couldn't agree with you more. Jim Harbaugh, really good football mind. I'm not the biggest fan of him, again, since he coached at Michigan. And if we're talking with fans and alliances, and sure, like as we do get into sometimes, in this. But I think he's a good fit there. The Rams' confidence level was interesting. I think that just goes to show you Sean McVay and how much trust they have, the Rams fans have in McVay and his ability to reinvent the draft and be able to, find the diamonds in the rough as he has. You look at Puka Nacua out of BYU. Not really hard to see the talent there coming out of college, but again, McVay taking the priority on him, and you've seen what's happened with Puka. So, it's been really, really fun to see, how different teams will go about it. And again, because McVay's draft board looks a lot different than Jim Harbaugh's. Like McVay is looking for a different type of player, and Harbaugh's looking for the old school, typical like football guy. So it's interesting how different teams approach it for sure, Tyler.
The Eagles being third is interesting to me because the relationship with Nick Sirianni and the Eagles fan base is fickle at best. And obviously they're feeling really good because they obviously won the Super Bowl. But if they got bounced in the first, round of the NFL playoffs, I imagine that confidence would probably be around like 50% because they're so wishy-washy on him. Like they're ready to run him out of town and fire him at the beginning of this past season. You know what I mean? And obviously they won the entire thing. And again, he's brash and can rub people the wrong way. But it is funny to see that, yeah, right now they have all the confidence in him, but go on a 2-game losing streak this year and that may tank.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the Eagles, Tyler, I'm just ready for Howie Roseman to draft more Georgia players as he usually does.
There's going to be a lot more available, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm assuming the Eagles to pick one, maybe 2 more Georgia players, as we were talking about off air. The Falcons are incapable of doing somehow. But yeah, like I don't know. You hear Eagles in the NFL draft, you expect some Georgia dogs to go off the board for them.
Yeah, and they call them the Philly dogs for a reason now because they have so many back there. And yeah, as you mentioned, the Falcons, despite having an NFL talent factor in their backyard, kind of refuse to pick guys from Georgia for whatever reason that nobody in that fan base understands.
Makes no sense to me, Tyler. Like you're same colors and everything. Like
you have a fan base that's connected, saying, "Well, hey, I'll watch that guy at Georgia. Go watch him in Atlanta now," and they don't do it for whatever reason. And I was telling you earlier that there was projections for the Falcons to make some Georgia picks tonight with Jalen Walker, and I've seen those projections. I'm like, well, that's definitely not going to happen because there's no way they're going to do that because they don't do that.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. You would think it make sense, right? Like and I don't know. I would assume it's something ownership or I don't know. It's.
I've been trying to find the explanation for a very long time.
drives me nuts. Like, right, and you would think like because Atlanta and all of the mantras and like the energies kind of match up similar. It's like because we're gonna smash you in the mouth and we're right, like ATL, like all of that, like it lines up so perfectly. It doesn't make any sense. Tyler, I feel for your fan base and everybody in the ATL rooting for the Dirty Birds.
I wish I knew. I don't expect anything different coming up tonight. One thing that is always interesting when it comes to drafts is, of course, busts. Now, we're not going to know that on day one. We're not going to know that after year number one, but there have been plenty of draft busts as the years have gone by. USA Today put out their top 50 list. I'm intrigued by some of the guys that ended up in the top 5. We'll dive into that coming up next. Reminder, you can always watch us on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by our friends at Integrated Media, or listen to us on the 107.5 The Game app from the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Joe Machika hanging out with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Joe Machika hanging out with you on your Thursday here on The Game, getting you set for the NFL Draft. Baseball back in action, by the way, tomorrow for South Carolina, taking on Kentucky, 3-game set. Game number 1 tomorrow night at 6:30, which you can listen to right here on the game. Pregame coverage starting at 6:15 as they look to try and stay alive in their pursuit of the postseason. Of course, when we talk about drafts, always got to talk about busts, as just about not every single draft, but the vast majority of them feature at least one guy that goes high in the first round that does not end up materializing into anything. Now, again, last year's draft, it's only been a year, so we can't go out and say, oh, well, look at that, Caleb Williams is a bust or something like that, because you need more time for these things to happen. But there's a lot of just overall understood busts that everybody just kind of agrees on. USA Today put out their top 50 list of bust in NFL draft history. And in surprise of no one, Ryan Leaf coming in at number 1 with 2nd overall pick back in 1998. And, again, that was before you and I were obviously old enough to kind of understand what was going on in the world of football. But you look at what Ryan Leaf did, obviously, turns out he wasn't the best dude overall in the locker room and those kind of things. And apparently, when Mike DeBose was his coach at Washington State, Mike Price, was his coach at Washington State. He masked some of his inefficiencies with the way they ran that offense, and obviously got to the NFL, and it just couldn't shred water there.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Number 1 on the list, Ryan Leaf. Again, he more infamous, with who he was drafted after. Peyton Manning, and again, the Colts making the right decision there. But yeah, Ryan Leaf, one of the biggest busts in NFL draft history for sure.
Number 2, Todd Mandarich, who went 2nd overall to the Packers back in '89. Dude was just a freak of a specimen. They used to call him the Incredible Bulk, and apparently he was doing steroids, as we came to find out later. But despite, and just because you're the most athletic-looking guy, the biggest, strongest guy, doesn't mean you're going to be able to translate on the field. And obviously didn't end up working out for the Packers, and again got himself into trouble with steroids and all those kind of things. Something that doesn't, because offensive line is not as sexy of a pick, right? Like, there's going to be offensive linemen picked tonight, like Will Campbell, that people are going to kind of gloss over because, if you're a really good offensive lineman, you never get talked about. Like, Joe Alt is probably going to be like a all-pro offensive lineman for the Chargers for years to come that nobody's ever going to talk about because he's just up there doing his job.
Yeah, Will Campbell mentioned that too. Talk about any offensive lineman that's opened their mouth ever. Will Campbell is a perfect example for it because he's like, you guys don't know my name unless I'm screwing up.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, defensive end that goes and gets 5-12 sacks a year is going in the first round versus an offensive lineman who allows maybe half of that, 6 or 4 sacks is not getting drafted. They're going to be, selling groceries or something.
Right.
So I like Will Campbell. I mean, even though he played for LSU, I think he's very honest and open about the position. So that's huge. But yeah, I agree, Tyler. The offensive line picks are usually the ones that, really actually anchor a franchise, but they're not going to be the flashiest things. You get to see Goodell look like a tiny little guy
right.
next to all these big old players. But yeah, that's about it.
Jamarcus Russell coming in at number 3. That speaks for itself. I don't think we have to dive into that, and we all know what happened with Jamarcus Russell and refuse. He just didn't care. That was his problem. He just did not care once he got to the NFL. And if you want to be successful at that level of football, you have to try, and he wasn't trying.
Yeah, and Tyler, I'll say this, one of my favorite things to do on Madden back in the day in 2008 was rebuild Jamarcus Russell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have the redemption story that was, and have everything pan out the way it was supposed to. Unfortunate for Russell, and again, just unable to keep things together, keep playing, and live up to the expectation. The hype is too much.
So in their top 5, they kind of grouped together the class of 2021 at quarterback. Quickly here, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields, all listing them as bust. I get that for Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. I won't go that route with Mac Jones and Justin Fields. Did Justin Fields end up being what we thought he was going to be? Not necessarily, but he's still a starter in the NFL. And Mac Jones, I think, was failed by the organization around him more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And, out of anybody I agree with, on this list or out of this 4th, lineup spot, it's Trey Lance, somebody who had so much hype and was going to be the next Carson Wentz coming out of North Dakota State, yada, 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 so much hype. We've heard nothing from Trey Lance. I believe he got involved with.
He's still with the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, I think he's with the Cowboys still. But yeah, I mean, I really haven't heard anything. The last thing I heard was he was involved with a cow herd, and that was about it. Like, it's, shipped off and never heard from again.
And Zach Wilson, I think that kind of speaks for itself. We all saw that front and center of how awful he was.
Which I think, again, is more institutional failure. I think Zach Wilson's a good quarterback. It's just he was a Jet. I think he could have worked out had he gone to Green Bay and done the Jordan Love route or something like that. Like, I think he could have been, Sam Darnold or what you will. Sam Darnold was on this list too. I saw somewhere deep down. Like, I mean, I guess
I think he's kind of redeemed himself.
Yeah, big time, right? Like, I think that's the perfect example of what happens when you go to the wrong franchise, right? You're the Jets being a perfect example. There's no organization whatsoever.
Well, Cam Ward's going to be the number 1 overall pick coming up tonight. We'll see if he can avoid being on this list in years to come. Joe, appreciate you filling in, and we'll check in with you tomorrow morning as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Again, appreciate you having me on as always. And, super fun joining you on a Thursday. Looking forward to joining you for an extended period of time tomorrow. Break down everything that went down tonight, at the draft.
Absolutely. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday here on the game.
bask in that for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, it is as old as you would think that sound would get, and it does. Maybe on day 3, it does.
When
Maybe
you've
get
heard
there.
it 250 times, yeah, maybe a little bit.
But is there not a little just how long trivia? How long has that been the sounder for a pick? I mean,
I believe 09 was the first year they used
Okay.
it, which was 16 years ago now.
I feel like it's just embedded in my brain, but
Yeah.
brings back good memories. I feel
Well, now they use it for the NBA, WNBA. Like, it's just become the draft sound, not even specifically just the NFL anymore. So, you hear that, somebody's about to get their name called, and their dreams are going to come true.
I hope whoever made that is making some coin.
Every time it plays, they get like $1 or something like that.
Yeah,
be
maybe
good.
Will Helms knows where the sound came from and when it became a thing.
We welcome in Will Helms, draft expert, joining us now on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Will, appreciate your time. First of all, any idea of the lore of the NFL draft chime?
I have no idea. It's been around as long as I can remember. 2009 seems actually pretty recent. I feel like it was, it's embedded in my brain that the NFL draft has that sound. But I would have said probably earlier than that. So that's actually kind of surprising to me that it was only 16 years ago.
And that was the Stafford draft back in 09, 16 years ago, when I guess that would have first been used. Again, appreciate you taking your time. I know this is your time of year where you can really nerd out on these kind of things. Your excitement level for just this draft in general tonight and the guys we're going to see go in the first round.
I'm really excited. I feel like every year it's a kind of a crapshoot who's going to go win and all that kind of stuff. And that's why we do mock drafts, and that's why the winners of the mock drafts get like 30% right, because there is so much unpredictability. But this year specifically, it feels like there are more rumors. There are more teams trying to smoke screen, teams trying to trick other teams into thinking they're picking one guy when they might be looking at another guy. So I'm really excited to see, especially the kind of middle of this first round, how it goes.
We'll get to the Gamecocks later on. I want to talk a little just big picture draft. I mean, at this point, obviously there can be a curveball, there can be a switch up. Are you shocked if it's not Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter? Is that the consensus right now, or am I ahead of myself on that? What do you think happens right off the top? I know the deeper, and it happens pretty quick, but the deeper you get, it really is just kind of throwing paint at the wall. But is that the consensus on the first few picks?
Yeah, I think that's the consensus, and that's honestly probably what I would do too. I think the Giants are the wild card there because they need so many different things, but with it being a elite talent at the top, I mean, Cam Ward, I had him as quarterback 1 if he would have come out 2 years ago. So this has been a long time coming that he, is at the top of the draft, and then you've got a truly generational talent in Travis Hunter, and then, a very high-profile pass rusher in Abdul Carter. So those do feel like the 3 guys that are like, okay, these are the elite talents. The Giants are a little bit weird just because do they really need an edge rusher? It is, Abdul Carter's talent enough to make them ignore some other needs, and I think it probably is. But that's probably the way I would see the first 3 picks going.
Again, talking to Will Helms, draft expert here on the Love Chevrolet phone line. Speaking of those first couple picks in the draft, they're looking at your latest mock draft. You actually kind of go against the grain a little bit. You have Travis Hunter going number 1 overall to the Titans, and Cam Ward dropping to number 2, going to the Browns.
Yeah, that's kind of what I always do. The draft, I always do a what I would do if I were the GM of every team. And then the day of, I'll drop this is probably what's going to happen. I'm always better. I always feel better about the what I would do because my expertise has always been the scouting. It's not been reading the tea leaves and seeing, well, this team wants this guy and this team is thinking about this guy but kind of wants to go the other direction. So I'll do a predictive mock today. It's probably not going to be really accurate. I'm never very accurate with those. But in terms of what I would do, I think Travis Hunter is a generational talent, and I don't think the Titans are ready for a quarterback. So while Cam Ward definitely upgrades the Titans, I probably would go with Travis Hunter first just because the quarterback class next year, you've got, Lenoris, you've got Arch Manning, you've got Garrett Nussmeier, you've got a lot of these guys that if I were a team at the top, I'd say let's take another really talented guy that doesn't play quarterback and just be okay with being terrible this year and come back next year and grab our quarterback next year.
Well, let's talk about the somewhat local team, the Panthers. I know you've got North Carolina ties, obviously, too. What are you hearing in terms of the direction they could go today?
Well, Jalen Walker's been the guy that they've been locked in on forever. Is that a smokescreen? Is that they really like him? He went to Salisbury High School as an off-ball middle linebacker at the 2A level in North Carolina high school football. So they've known him for a while. We've known him for a while. The question is he the guy that upgrades the defense? Is he the guy they want? Or now there's rumor of Mason Graham falling a little bit, possibly because he didn't do any athletic testing. Is that the guy? Personally, I would trade out of number 8. This is a starter draft, not a superstar draft. I don't see a ton of all-pro guys in this draft, but I do see a ton, even going down to day 2, even maybe day 3, of solid multi-year contributors, multi-year starters. And the Panthers don't have an early second-round pick. I would be trying to trade back and see if you can get a couple of picks in that late first-round, early second-round range, because the value there, I think, is going to be better than it is at the top of the draft at a really awkward position at 8.
Good talking to draft expert Will Helms here on the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. You mentioned trades there. As of right now, the first round is sitting pretty stagnant. Nothing's been made going into the draft. Are we in for just a ton of chaos tonight with a ton of teams moving around and making trades as the draft is going along because it's been so calm leading up?
I think definitely that's a possibility. We've seen that people want to trade up for Travis Hunter. I don't think anybody's going to be dumb enough to trade back in that position and give up Travis Hunter. But I think it's going to be interesting that a lot of teams seem to want to trade down because they do recognize that the value in this draft is probably day 2. But it takes 2 people to trade. And so if you've got a ton of teams that want to trade back and nobody that wants to trade up, I think we may see a couple of trades that seem like, wow, they didn't have to give up a ton to move up a few spots, or they moved up a ton of spots with just 1 extra pick or 2 extra picks. I think that's going to be what's interesting. I don't foresee a team trading 3 future first-round picks to move up 8 spots. I see maybe, hey, we only had to give up a 4th rounder to move up, a spot or 2 in the first round. I think we'll see a lot of smaller trades. I don't know if we'll see any blockbusters this year. But then I also think we'll see a veteran or 2 moves, whether that's a Jamison Williams or a Kirk Cousins. I don't think he would go tonight because he's not a first-round pick. Or maybe even a Tyreek Hill. I think we may see a veteran or 2 go for a first-round draft pick rather than teams selling the farm later in this draft to move up in the first round.
Will, I'm looking at ESPN.com's sort of most recent mock, and they actually have 2 running backs going in the first round. Ashton Jeanty, of course, they've got him going 5, and then Amarian Hampton, a guy I remember out of high school, man, was a stud. Is this, are these guys just that good, or is the running back position possibly, could it reverse where that position gets a little bit more respect moving forward, or what can you speak to on that?
I think it's at both ends, and it's going to be interesting because Ashton Jeanty is truly an elite, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, like that level of talent. So it's not surprising to see him when he hears his name called in the top 10 tonight. What's interesting is that this running back class is so deep that I don't think we'll see another running back in the first round. We could. We definitely could. I've got some concerns with Amarian Hampton's burst and ability in the passing game. He just didn't do a lot of that at North Carolina. I'm going to be interested. I've got 12 running backs in my top 100. And typically when we see that, teams are willing to wait a little bit later in the draft because they know, okay, first-round pick, I might only have 3 cornerbacks I really like, and I need a cornerback, but I've got 8 running backs that I would be very happy to have on my team. Instead of taking a running back early and then trying to figure out later what to do with a cornerback, maybe I'm going to take this position that's not quite as deep. I'm going to take a guy that I really like there, and I'll be happy even if I don't get my first choice at running back, maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. I can still get a guy that's going to contribute to my team. And so I'm going to be very interested to see if any teams reach for a running back because it is a very strong class, or if teams are content to wait and just kind of take whoever comes to them later in the draft, knowing that there are a bunch of guys who are going to contribute.
And the stigma around running backs has obviously changed a lot these past couple of years. And you look at, obviously, Saquon Barkley being a big catalyst for why the Eagles won the Super Bowl this past year, and Jeanty being very much a special talent. Do we see a new trend of running backs starting to go higher in these next couple drafts, or is it just Ashton Jeanty kind of bucking the trend of recent drafts, being able to potentially go so high tonight?
again, I think it's kind of a both and. Jensen is a truly elite talent. I wrote about 3 or 4 months ago, just looking at him compared to some of the other guys, and is at some of those other guys, but didn't get many carries in high school, so he has more tread left on his legs than, say, a Derrick Henry did, or, I mean, Derrick Henry's still going, but some of these other guys that, had 300, 400, 500 carries in high school, he had under 300 carries in 2 seasons in high school. So even though he was a workhorse last year, he's still got a lot of tread on his legs. He's an elite talent. I do think that Saquon kind of comes up because it's like, oh, yeah, just find a Saquon Barkley, as if those guys grow on trees. And you're not going to find it. But I do think a running back upgrades a contender. Where you're going to see issues is, people are looking at, maybe the Raiders take a running back. Well, if the Raiders take a running back, they're not a playoff team. A running back is not upgrading the Raiders. But a running back, in Kansas City, very much upgrade them to, again, become one of the favorites to win Super Bowl. Or even a team like Minnesota could probably use one, or one of these other teams that's flirting with the playoffs. A running back can really upgrade that offense versus a team that probably is drafting the top 10. A running back's probably not going to do as much as maybe that offensive tackle or an edge rusher or a cornerback at a more important position.
Tyler, do we want to do the Gamecocks on the other side?
Yeah, we'll dive into the Gamecock stuff on the other side, so we'll hold tight for us, and we'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. Tyler and Wes along with you on your Thursday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyron West hanging out with you here on your Thursday on the game. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, by the way, sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. We're talking all things draft with draft expert Will Helms on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Before we dive into the Gamecocks getting set to go in the draft in the next couple days, I believe Wes has an answer on our question about the draft chime and its origins.
Yes. Composer Bob Christensen is who created it.
Okay.
And actually, there was a story in The Athletic earlier this week. So I guess other people have had the same question, the same thought. And so they started experimenting with a chime in like 2004, but the current chime and the way it's used on every single pick debuted in 2006 and has just stuck ever since.
Well, Will, now we can both say we learned something today, right?
Yeah, there you go.
As we turn our attention to the Gamecocks in the draft, of course, we expect Nicky Moore to hear his name called coming up somewhere around the mid to late first round tonight. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier on in the morning, but he's somebody that obviously his production on the field spoke for itself here at South Carolina. But what he did at the Combine a couple weeks back blew everybody away, especially teams in the NFL. And we already kind of thought he was going to be a first-round pick, but that certainly solidified him getting his name called coming up tonight.
Yeah, I think, Columbia media and guys who have been around him kind of knew that, dating back to, the rumor was he challenged Nick Harbor to a race one time and, wasn't very far behind. And so I feel like when I made my initial draft board, I went ahead and put him above where everybody else would with the Combine push because we knew the Combine would be good. I still don't think we were prepared for how good his Combine was. His RAS score, which is relative athletic score, just basically saying how athletic are you compared to other guys at your position, made him the most athletic safety of all time. And if you put him at linebacker, he'd be the most athletic linebacker of all time. And if you put him at corner, he'd be like the second most athletic corner at all time. If you put him at wide receiver, he'd be like just behind Calvin Johnson. And so, what he did at the Combine is truly one of the all-time greatest performances there. And so I didn't really move him on my draft board when that happened because I was kind of expecting something to happen. But I do think that there were at least a few people who were not aware of his athleticism that were kind of blown away with what he did in Indianapolis.
Well, and to your point, Will, even if I watched him do it on a lesser scale at high school camp in Columbia. I guess that would have been like 4 summers ago at this point. And so I was anticipating it, but to your point, I wasn't anticipating it being like the best Combine, at least in terms of measurables of all time. So, I think there's levels to everything, and it was I think we all maybe anticipated him blowing up a little bit for the people who hadn't paid attention, but even I was like, holy cow, like this is on another level. Where is, speaking of levels, what's kind of the ceiling here? Like how high could Nick go tonight? And then on the flip side, is there kind of a cutoff where you're like, I don't think he's going to get past this team if he falls to them?
Yeah, when I do my predictive mock, I'm going to probably have him in the late teens, early 20s. There are a couple teams I'm looking at. I think he'd fit really well with the Dolphins, but I don't get the sense that they're going to take him at 13. If they drop down a little bit, they might take him a little bit later. But really starting with the Colts at 14 and kind of going anywhere in between. There are a bunch of teams from 14 to about 30. I don't think he gets past the Bills if he falls that far. But there are a bunch of teams in that kind of like late teens to early 20s range that I think would definitely use him. I think the best fit is the Vikings at 24. But I also think the Vikings, who have only 4 picks the entire draft, might trade down just because they've got a ton of holes in their secondary. And while Nicky can fill several of them at one time, I still think they want a haul of bodies. And so I think he fit really well there. I just don't necessarily think that they're just going to stand pat and take him there. I think they'll trade back. But I think the Bills are probably the floor there. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Buffalo trade up to get him ahead of a team like the Ravens, who have been known to want highly athletic safeties.
Again, talking to draft expert Will Helms on Love Chevrolet phone lines. And, of course, if anytime you come off the board first in your position group, that is a big deal. And guys like Xavier Watts, Malachi Starks are also being potential first-round picks themselves. But how does this safety class stack up to ones of years past that Emori could be the first one off the board for tonight?
I mean, I love this safety class. I think there's value everywhere at a position that is talking about positions that are being valued more. I think quietly over the past years, and we've seen with the money, the importance of a really good safety and what a really good safety can do, especially one that can both, play a deep safety kind of center field position and come down in the box. Man, those are so important. And I think teams are starting to see that. And so really good year to want a safety. And I think there are a lot of teams that do want a safety. So I think we'll see a lot of them go early. I'm looking at my top 100 here. I've got 7 in my top 100. And a couple of other guys outside of that, could kind of find their way into that really early day 3 range. I really love the safety class, and I'm a little bit higher on guys like Xavier Watts anyway. But I've got 2 with true first-round grades out of just 15 guys with first-round grades.
Will, I'm going to throw this question at you, then I'm going to come back to it because I don't know if you would have the number right in front of you. But I do want you to tell us before you go, how many total Gamecocks do you think are going to go in the draft this year? But before that, who do you think is next off the board after Nick E? For Carolina, obviously.
So given the depth or lack of depth at certain positions, I think that TJ Sanders is probably the next guy off, just the combination of size and speed. There are some NFL defensive line coaches that are looking at him going, that's a guy I can improve. And that's a guy that has already huge potential that I can make even better. And so I've got him as my 3rd ranked Gamecock, but I think that he'll probably go off the board next, followed by either Demetrius Knight or Kyle Kennard. Kyle Kennard's an interesting one just because this edge class is also really good on day 2. And whatever order they go from, the 8th edge off the board to about the 24th, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes anywhere in that range just based on where teams value guys. I found ranking edges extremely difficult this year. So he could go really early. He could go a little bit later than we expect. But I think that those are the 4 guys that I'm looking at by the end of Friday night going in the first 3 rounds.
Field Yates put out his last mock draft, I believe yesterday, and he had his list of buzzy guys between the 2nd and 5th round that could surprise a lot of people. And Tonka Hemingway ended up on that list, projected number 133 overall by Mel Kiper's big board. What could Tonka Hemingway potentially do in this draft that might surprise people?
Well, I think that people are still stuck in 2008, where your defensive tackles have to be 6'5" and 310 pounds, and Tonka's never going to be a guy that puts on that much weight. But I think that there's a really big market for guys that can play inside, can play outside, can play the run, and can be flashy pass rushers. And we know the athleticism. He was like a 7-sport athlete in high school or something like that. We know the athleticism. We've seen the flashes. I think that there's going to be a team that falls in love with him that could take him a little bit earlier.
Will, how many Gamecocks you think overall?
I'm going to go 8. That it just really depends. 6th and 7th round, not that you can ever predict them anyway, but because of NIL, with NIL keeping a lot of really good players back in school, this draft is just loaded on the back end. There are going to be probably 50, 60, 70 undrafted guys that end up contributing this season. And so you could have a 5th round grade on a guy, and just the way the board falls, you end up getting him as an undrafted free agent. You could have, a run on edge rushers, and you get your, 50th ranked edge rusher in the 6th round just because of the way that things went in the draft earlier. So predicting that is really difficult. I do think that probably my biggest hot take, I think Kai Kroger gets drafted. I think that there are too many teams that need a punter, and there are, he's consistently outranking a lot of these other punters. I think he's either probably the 1st or 2nd punter off the board. And I do think that Kai Kroger gets drafted as one of those guys. But beyond that, I mean, you're going to get Rocket Sanders. Hopefully you're going to get Josh Simon. I think he's got a real NFL skill set. Then you got a lot of these other guys that are going to be borderline day 3 undrafted free agents. I think you'll have probably 10 or 11 that contribute. But how many get drafted? I'm going to guess 8. But that's just kind of a, throw a dart at a board and hope it sticks.
Well, that'd be a record for South Carolina. We'd certainly love to see that. We'll appreciate your insight and excited to see what happens this weekend.
Me too. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Again, Will Helms, draft expert, joining us on Love Chevrolet phone lines. We'll continue on with the guest coming up next. Transfer offensive lineman Boaz Stanley going to join us as he recaps what's been going down with spring practice in the spring game in his first year here at South Carolina. Up next in the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling Heating, Tyler and West here on the game.
Yeah, like Tyler said, this show brought to you by our friends at Krantz Cooling. Head on over to KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com. If you need to schedule an appointment, you can do that directly from the website, or you can call them 803-672-3224. Family-owned, family-operated. Obviously, if somebody's going to go in there and let you know what's going on with your HVAC, you want people you can trust. And Krantz Cooling and Heating is been doing that since 1983. So they've been trustworthy, great workers, a great company since then. And whether it's something where there's already an issue with your HVAC, or you just want to go ahead and get that peace of mind for your home or business and have some preventative maintenance done, they can handle that for you. 803-672-3224. And again, that website is KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com. Head on there right now, schedule an appointment, have them out at your house just like they've been to Chris Clark's. Shout out again to Krantz Cooling.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Our hour of guests continues to roll on as we now welcome in on the Love Chevrolet phone lines transfer offensive lineman Boaz Stanley. Boaz, first of all, appreciate you taking your time this morning. You've now wrapped up your first full spring practice at South Carolina, spring game this past Friday night. How would you assess how everything went, and how ready are you for the season to get here?
I had a lot of fun. We had a lot of good things happen during spring. It was really fun to kind of think we're getting there, and I think we practiced well, and I think it was really fun to get out there with everybody.
Hey, Boaz, it's Wes. Appreciate you doing this today, man. Coach Beamer was talking earlier this week, actually, about emerging leaders and how, as a transfer, he mentioned you by name, but he said as transfers, when you first get in, you're kind of just trying to get your feet under you, get a feel for how everything works. But then as the spring goes along, you get more settled in. Then you kind of have a little break in May. And then when you come back, he thinks that offers an opportunity for guys like yourself to be a little bit more vocal, to lead a little bit more. And he basically identified you as one of like two guys who he saw those natural leadership qualities in. So, one, what does it mean to kind of hear your head coach say that publicly? And two, how do you sort of feel like you are as a leader? Like, what is your approach to that part of the game?
Yeah, that's awesome hearing him say that. That's kind of what we talked about in our exit meetings that we had this past week. I think that one thing that I said is just like, you can't really come into a new place and then start trying to like just tell everybody, like hold everyone accountable or stuff like that. You kind of got to lead by example. And that's something that I've really been focusing on during winter and during the spring ball. So that's just kind of like that. I think that's the first step you have to take, especially as a transfer. You kind of got to earn everybody's trust. And then that's definitely something that I got to work on during the summer, and something that I've kind of talked to with some of the other O-line guys that are going to be kind of leaders in the room, which is just meeting more and building the chemistry that we have to work together, because that's the main thing that we've kind of seen during spring balls. We just got to build chemistry between whoever's playing, and that's only going to come with more time spent together, just going out to eat together or getting more work in outside of when we're working like as a team. So I think that's the main things that we got to work on, is just spending more time together, becoming even better friends than we are now. And I think that will really take our game on the field to the next level.
And talking to Boaz Stanley here on the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. You mentioned those exit interviews, and Beamer's talked a lot about that as we got towards the end of spring, that, you know, they're honest, they're raw, and, you know, he doesn't sugarcoat it with people, so they know where they stand heading into the rest of the offseason. You don't necessarily have to give away what he said to you specifically. What are those conversations like, and how good is it to kind of know where you stand coming out of spring as we head into summer and get closer to the season?
I think it's a great way for us to just know what, especially what like the head coach wants to see from us during the summer and going into fall camp. I think that's a great way for us to just get like a reality check, if you know what I mean, where we're just going there. We can kind of ask him whatever we want, and he tells us just how he sees us and what he wants to see out of the O-line. I asked him what he wants us to see, what he wants to see out of the O-line. Sorry.
Portions of their lives. He mentioned D Knight last year, married with 2 kids, and there's several guys on the team right now who are in your position. You know, I think Gabe's getting married in a couple of weeks. And he was talking about guys just kind of look up to that, because you're just maybe a little bit more established in life, just a little bit more matured than maybe when somebody comes in at 18. So is there a correlation between like just maybe being a little more established in your private life, and then that maybe carrying over to how you carry yourself in the football life, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. There's like, I mean, it's definitely like I don't know if it's just like everybody, you being at a different like season of life, but there's definitely a higher standard held for people who are married, because you kind of like, I mean, I have a wife, and some people, majority of the team doesn't, so it's definitely like a unique situation that I'm in, and some other guys, like you mentioned Gabe, and Brady is also married, so it's like you're kind of just in a different area of life. And there's definitely some guys look up to you, like no one thinks that, everyone when I got here thought I was like 23 or something. I was like, no, I'm only 20, and everyone's like, what the heck, dude, you're married and you're 20. And so there's definitely like a thought that you are older, and you kind of have to act like that. You can't just come in here and act immature or anything like that. You got to be mature. And that's definitely something that I've kind of tried to step up to, is just, you're in a different area of life, so you can't just act like everybody else. Or, I mean, also, I think that there's just in general, everybody on the team is more mature. That's what I've noticed, especially with the young guys. Nobody's like, it's not like, oh, these freshmen are super immature or anything. I think they're very mature. Obviously not as much as all the older guys, but I definitely noticed that. So that's been kind of like a push for me to be even better off the field as on the field.
Did the other guys on the team come to you for relationship advice?
Yeah, I have had that a couple times. They asked me like what it was like dating, and how I knew like how I knew I wanted to get married. So that's definitely been a couple guys asked me that when I first got here, and I mean even now people ask me that.
Boaz, let's take it back to football real quick. The one thing about these interviews, we like to give the fans just a little glimpse behind the scene of kind of what a day in the life is right now. So I know y'all are kind of in a little bit of that transition period. Spring ball is over, but we're not quite at the end of the true school semester yet, I guess. We're kind of getting to that point. So I know you had a workout today. What does just sort of a day in your life on average look like at this point sort of in the football calendar?
So right now, we've kind of like petered off of the doing more football stuff. But like I'll wake up at 5:45 to 6, and then I'll kind of get ready, and then I'll go into the facility around 6:30, and that's when breakfast starts. So I'll go in, eat breakfast, and then after breakfast I'll stretch and kind of I have a little morning routine where I'll go stretch, and then I'll kind of do some shoulder work because I had shoulder surgery. So I'm like, that's something. I had shoulder surgery last 2 seasons ago, so I kind of have to keep that up and just kind of do maintenance work so that I stay fresh from that. And then we'll have workouts. Our workouts are at 8 o'clock right now. And then we'll do that for about 2 hours. And then shower, go home, kind of hang out for a little bit. I'll do some homework and eat lunch. And then I have class at 2:20 to 3:45, and then I have a little break where I'll either come back to my apartment or go back to the facility and get some extra work in. And then after that, I have class from 5:30 to 6:45, and then after that, I got dinner, and then I'll either get some studying in, which may or may not occur that often, and kind of just wind down for the day.
That's a pretty darn loaded schedule there. I know you guys get a little bit more time off in May, and last we're here about 60 seconds. You spend that time here in Columbia, going back to Georgia. How are you going to take some of that time off?
Yeah, I'm going. Me and my wife's anniversary is on the 11th, so we're going to Charleston for a little bit, and then I'll come back here and kind of we got some like optional workouts that they have for us. So I'll do those and try to just get some conditioning in and work on that pre-summer conditioning so I'm not coming in and like dying when Coach Day has us. I don't know when. I think we come in at the end of May or at the beginning of June. I can't really remember, but just so I'm ready for them.
Well, Boaz, we appreciate you taking your time for us this morning, and enjoy that time off, and we can't wait to see you in the field this fall.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Boaz Stanley, of course, transfer offensive lineman, coming in from Troy. Can't wait to see him in the fall as he potentially anchors this offensive line. Excited to see him play. We'll come back and wrap up the hour for the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating, Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell, along with you on your Thursday here on The Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. We've been telling you about them for really years now, and if you want to take that man cave to the next level, you want to take that the TV just in your living room to the next level, have it hung up on the wall, have the wires hidden away for that professional look, they can handle that for you. And the great thing about Integrated Media is that anything involving making your home a smart home, a home theater system, TV installations, or security and cameras, they can handle it all. You just take whatever your dream is for all those things and take it directly to them, and then they're going to make it a reality. And then they can sort of integrate it all as well onto a tablet so that you can control it all right basically from your couch or even not even being at home. For me, it was making sure that I had Ethernet run to my office. For you, it might be, like I said, hanging that TV or taking that man cave to the next level. Hit them up at integratedmediainc.com today.
Welcome back in Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head and Wes Mitchell along with you here on your Thursday, wrapping up the hour. We'll dive back more into some draft conversation coming up top of the hour when we get Chris Clark back here. Also some news in the transfer portal world for South Carolina as well. Again, appreciate Will Helms and Boaz Stanley for joining us a little bit earlier on in the hour. This is something I talked about yesterday that I wanted to bring up once again to you here, Wes, but we've kind of been following the fallout of what happened with Nico going to UCLA. Now his brother's joining him. Now Arkansas is asking for some of the money back in NIL and all that kind of stuff. It's been a chaotic story that's been going around college football, but one thing that did improve for a lot of other quarterbacks is their respective Heisman odds. Now that Nico's kind of plummeted and Joey Aguilar has actually risen up quite a bit now that he's going to Tennessee. Lenore Sellers comes in tied for fifth at plus 1,600 in Heisman odds, according to FanDuel. At this point, again, we're sitting here in the middle of April, so a lot of time between now and when the season starts, and obviously a lot of football to be played before they hand out the trophy. And I'm not saying that Sellers is going to be Heisman finalist or win the trophy or anything like that, but it is cool and very unique to have a quarterback get this much hype going into a season at Carolina. And, of course, Rattler going, fifth round last year was the highest a quarterback had ever been drafted. Unfortunately, South Carolina does not have a rich history of quarterbacks being thought of in that upper echelon of college football. So, and he certainly earned it with the way he played last year, especially in those last 6 games. It is neat to see Sellers be in these conversations among the best going into the 2025 season.
Yeah, and I think, Tyler, for one, you want to maybe use this to continue the momentum with your quarterback recruiting as well. So any of this attention is good, I think. And, as excited as people were about Spencer going into his second year and staying at South Carolina, I don't remember much true Heisman talk going into that season.
It was a rocky first year and kind of turned it on late, but he didn't quite end up, and there's a lot of factors for that. He didn't quite end up being what people thought he was going to be in 2022.
Yeah, and, you were coming off the huge finish there, but it just wasn't, on a national level, it wasn't talked about the way Lenoris is being talked about right now. And, South Carolina has had individual players with Heisman hype going into a season. I don't remember there being a quarterback that was talked about like this nationally for South Carolina actually in my lifetime. So that just goes and shows you how unique this is and how I think good of a situation it is. And, I was talking to an NFL draft guy yesterday, a scout, and we were talking about South Carolina's team, and he brought up the point that all of us have been talking about. Like, look, you're going to go into a lot of games where you're going to have the best quarterback and you're going to have the best pass rusher. And so that's a heck of a start. And so I think the thing with Sellers is it maybe sets up perfectly, Tyler, where you have enough talent around you that you're not just going to just have no chance, right? But you also have enough questions around you where some of the onus of being good on offense is ultimately going to come right back to 16. Yeah. Can he go make a play? So in terms of putting up numbers, in terms of having Heisman moments, in terms of, hey, man, this is going to be on you to will this team to victory at times, it does set up pretty well for him because, you see two ends of that spectrum. Sometimes a guy is a superstar, but he's on a team that just does not have enough talent for him to have a chance. Other times, a guy, we see it with different sport. We just see it like Don Staley's group. There's just so much talent spread out. Yeah. It's hard to just, for that one person to shine and be a superstar. You may have a pretty good balance of that going into this year. And, I think a lot of people are just excited to see what the next step is for Lenoris. Can he take that another leap forward now that he's going into his second year? What does Shula's influence on both the offensive scheme and him as a quarterback look? And but, yeah, the Heisman talk is real. This is not just something we're having to manufacture here locally. They should be talking about Lenoris. It's, Vegas knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and again, he's tied for fifth overall. Nussmeier and Arch Manning tied at the top at plus 800. Cade Klubnik with Clemson actually second at plus 1,000. Jeremiah Smith, obviously monster wide receiver out of Ohio State at third. Fourth, Julian Sayin, quarterback at Ohio State that has yet to prove anything, but when you're an Ohio State quarterback with talent around you, you're obviously going to garner a lot of attention. And then Sellers is tied with Dante Moore, who's expected starter at Oregon. DJ Lagway, again, those two guys being connected at the hip, it seems like, with all the comparisons. And then Drew Aller at Penn State coming back for another season. So good company to be in. And again, would you love him to be there at the Heisman Trophy ceremony and hold the trophy? Absolutely. But even if you don't get there, you can still have a great season. But it is cool to see him being thought of in the same realm as the top of the top in college football going into the year.
No, for sure. And I think it's all valid, man. Like, the talent is there. The ability is there. If you look at his stats the final half of last year and then say, well, if he plays that level for an entire season, I mean, the stats are going to be there as well. And it certainly helps, I think, just like with the polls, it helps that people already have their eyeballs on you. It's
right.
A little bit more difficult if you're kind of having to come out of nowhere next year and enter the spotlight. He's already got the spotlight on him.
Absolutely. We'll dive back into some transfer portal talk and the NFL draft coming up next in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs, this has been the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Thursday here on The Game.
All right, guys, taking great care of your roof, whether it's a home or business, it can be challenging, but you do not have to do it alone. Hit up our friends over at Classic Roofing, the go-to residential and commercial roofing company here in Columbia, South Carolina, and the surrounding Midlands areas. ClassicRoofingSC.com is the website. Phone number 803-590-7870. That's 803-590-7870. Now, if you go to that website or call that number, you're going to set up a free estimate. Now, when you get that estimate, they're going to come out, give you a complimentary quote, inspection, and consultation about the current status of that roof and the future of that roof. So that could be something as simple as, hey, there's a couple of little problem areas we need to address right now. Or it could be more big picture, like, all right, things look great now, but you need to go ahead and be planning in the next 3, 4, 5 years for the future of this roof. Whatever it is, they're going to help you through it. 803-590-7870 or ClassicRoofingSC.com.
11 o'clock, welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Towerhead and West Mitchell, anticipating the arrival of Chris Clark. He did tell us he was going to be a few minutes late. Now the debate is, how late is he going to be?
Is that another one of my bumpers? I think it is.
It is one of your bumpers, yes.
It's another dub, man.
Again, I like all of them. No complaints.
You know where I stole that one from?
Where?
Did you recognize it?
I've heard it before.
That's the opening for the college football playoff selection show this year, and,
Yes,
and the little updates each week that they did.
Okay, yeah.
They did a fantastic job with the intros on all those, but that was the background that was playing for them.
Look, we know the college football playoff process is an entire TV show, so I hope their production and choice of music would make it entertaining.
Yeah, you got to hit it out of the park,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's like, again, the only reason this exists is because of that.
Yeah, no doubt. I was curious to see, was Chris going to pull a me and run in at the last second, or pull a Terry and run in late?
So the funny thing about Terry the other day, because again, he's routinely 3 to 4 minutes late for the start of the halftime show, and I just ramble for a couple minutes until he gets in here, because he's the one that's supposed to plan that show out. So I never specifically know what he wants to lead the show with. So usually I'm just kind of bouncing off whatever the hot topic of the day is, and I can hear him come in because Terry's very loud, and that's okay. I hear him come in, and I think it was Wednesday, and I guess he stopped to talk to you. So I'm in here just rambling, waiting for him to come in, and he's over there propped up on our little cubicle, coffee in hand, just, shooting the bull with you out there. I'm like, Terry, we do have a show here. Come on, let's go.
He knows you have it covered, though.
I know,
that's
but
trust.
Again, it is nice when your co-host is there and you can start doing your back and forth. But I'm used to it at this point.
He's also your boss. So.
He is my boss, so I'm doing this in a very lighthearted way. And if anybody
he's listening, I'm sure.
If anybody makes fun of themselves, it's Terry. So I think he can take it.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going to be in the sports media world, you've got to have some lightheartedness. You got to be able to dish it out. You got to be able to take it a little bit as well.
For sure. Oh, here he comes. Was that him?
That was Chris.
That was Chris. Okay, he'll be joining us momentarily, and we can get his thoughts on what's going on with the Gamecocks in the transfer portal when he gets in here. As yesterday, we got a little bit more news as they have added in the edge room George Wilson coming in out of Campbell from the FCS level, a new addition to South Carolina's edge room, a guy that's played for a couple seasons there, was originally at Florida State, and has a backstory with South Carolina where he was originally a commit under Will Muschamp, decommitted, goes to Florida State. So a guy that this fan base is not unfamiliar with, to say the least.
Man, if there's one thing the transfer portal has given us, it is stories like this one, where I literally went back and found my story from when he committed to South Carolina in 2020, part of the 2021 class, and Gamecock Central, was part of Rivals at the time. And so I was like, does this story even still exist out there on the interwebs? I was able to find it. And long time coming, but George Wilson, over 5 years since he verbally committed to South Carolina, will suit up in the Garnet and Black this season. It was that summer of 2020 that he committed. And I think is an interesting, intriguing get for them. I know Chris posted on our message boards. He had talked to somebody. I had my Inside the Commit feature out, but also I talked to a couple people since then. And the consensus is that this guy is a great pass rusher. And, I personally, the more I gathered, I think this is an intriguing get for South Carolina, because I think you're getting a guy situationally right now with what we know about him. He may not be an every down, SEC defensive end, go play LSU and stop the run on first down. But I think in terms of teaming him up with a Dylan Stewart, particularly against pass first teams and in passing situations, from what I've been told, from what we've both been told, this guy's just a really, really good pass rusher, and he's got that pass rush juice. He's got that step off the edge, and I think he'll be used a little bit situationally. But I'm also intrigued, Chris, to see with a few months' time, we've heard a lot of good returns from transfers about their strength and conditioning staff here. How much strength, how much weight could they possibly add in a few months? And what is the Sterling Lucas effect here? which is taking a guy who has shown those flashes and then, just taking it to another level.
Yeah, he's got, I think an interesting canvas to work with, because you think about this guy. A lot of people look at George and go, who's that? He's coming from Campbell, which, first of all, if the transfer portal, not even nationally, let's just take it here locally at South Carolina, if it's taught us anything, it's that you can't just go off of where a guy's been or even his stats, I would argue, from a previous place. Now, that doesn't mean you should automatically assume, everybody they take is going to be a great player, But there are different categories of transfers. I wrote about this a little bit yesterday. Like, I remember when 3 players that really come to mind, Nick Muse, Nate Adkins, Jalen Brooks, when they committed to South Carolina, it wasn't just a who is this? Like, some people were actually angry. William and Mary, who are these people? Those 3 guys are all still playing in the NFL and all made a lot of plays. Now, you can't if you take an entire roster of Wingate, William and Mary, East Tennessee State, like you'll be like those programs, right? But there are good players that you can get from there. You go all the way from that extreme to, Spencer Rattler, Rocket Sanders, and everywhere in between. But we are, look at Demetrius Knight and his trajectory. He started at Georgia Tech 2 years ago. Demetrius Knight had 9 tackles and played in 3 games for Georgia Tech. Went to Charlotte, had a much better year, had 96 tackles, and then I don't need to tell everybody what he did last year at South Carolina. So if you're looking at George and you're going, well, he didn't, Wes, you're saying he's a good pass rusher, but he had, 5 sacks? He only had 5 sacks. If he was a really good pass rusher, he would have had 12 or whatever it is. But this is a guy that still, a bunch of schools, including South Carolina, Florida State, North Carolina, et cetera, recruited him out of high school. You talk to people who've watched him play, who've seen him. They like his bend, his pass rush ability. So does he have more to give? So to actually get down to the heart of your question before my tangent, yeah, I think this is a guy that you look at and you go, this guy has ability. And this staff, Sterling Lucas, Luke Day and his staff, they've done a good job of taking guys, even some guys that have come from big name brand programs, and helping them take the next step in their development. So I think this is a very interesting get. Is he a starter? Well, maybe not. But can he help you win a game or two by getting a big sack, getting a big pressure, forcing mistake? That's ultimately the goal here. And I like the pickup.
And it's important to remember, we're talking about edge here. You obviously have Dylan Stewart. You have guys returning like, Brian Thomas Jr., JT Gear that have shown you respective production in their time here at Carolina. So you're not bringing him in saying, okay, you got to go out there and be Kyle Kennard or something like that. If he is, that's fantastic. But if anything, he's a guy that's adding depth. You obviously lost Wendell Gregory the other day, so you had an extra spot in that room that you could fill, and he's adding you that. And again, if he goes out there and becomes something, that's fantastic. But it's not the defense is not living and dying on him going out there and becoming a first-round pick or something like that.
Yeah, and so, guys, I think South Carolina has very clearly tried to add value with their portal pickups. And, in today's world, what does that mean? Frankly, that's there's an NIL, I would say, there's an NIL just quality to that statement, too, is that, all right, how are you going to approach who you add? Are you going to say, hey, we're just going to go try to add the biggest name out there and pay him $1 million and all that? Or are you going to say, let's try to go find a fit that we think works here for both our needs on the field and for our locker room? And for South Carolina, it has been some value adds. And I think this is another example of that. If he is the only thing they get out of him is that he is the pass rusher that they think he is, then this will be a good pickup. Like that, if what they think he is right, if the evaluation is right, this pickup will actually outperform what a lot of people. I thought people were going to be a little bit more excited, one, just because of the name, and this is a guy that was committed as a high-priority target years ago, as we talked about. But two, I think this fits a little bit of what you needed. And, I think South Carolina's defense, we saw it last year, they let their guys, especially up front, play a little bit free. They let them try to play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. They, if you have Dylan Stewart on one side and then you have this guy, even situationally, if he's beating his man, he may not be a great run defender at this point in his career, but if he's creating penetration into the backfield and you're playing kind of an aggressive style of defense, you can win that way too. Like we've seen South Carolina be pretty aggressive up front and letting their guys try to just get upfield and create penetration. And so I think he is a little bit more of a blow the play up type defender as opposed to set the edge, perfect technique, let me use my strength and convert speed to power, stuff like that. Also, something that caught my attention, if you dive into the PFF here, so 19 pressures last year, 28 pressures, which is actually a pretty massive number. I know some of this stuff, your eyes maybe glaze over when you start getting too deep into the numbers, but 28 pressures in a season is a pretty good number. That's in 192 pass rush snaps. And what stands out to me about the grades is actually maybe a little bit similar to the case with Kyle Kennard before he came in. A lot of his grades are in a really good place, but his tackling grade is very low. So what that tells me is that this guy was getting some wins off the line of scrimmage, but then was missing a tackle. So is there some upside there just in terms of can you clean up, can you finish this playoff? And so that's something that probably has affected his stats. Another thing at play here, and I think there's been some maybe a little bit of misinformation floating around because his Campbell bio, if you just click it, it pops up and it says, he played in 9 games last year. He had 4 sacks. He had 11 tackles. And you're like, well, he didn't do much. Well, if you click through and go into the actual season stats, you'll see, well, wait, he was in 13 games. He had 5 sacks. He had 18 tackles. And so for whatever reason, the tallied stats do not actually match his real stat. I actually texted Steve Fink. I was like, hey, when y'all do his bio, be aware the stats on this thing are incorrect. And then so you go to his stats from the year before. He did have 4 sacks his first year there, 21 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. So I saw some of the numbers floating around that were just a little bit off. So when you come from a smaller program, you don't have a great maybe. I'm not saying anything about the people that did this. I'm just saying you don't have as big of a team maybe updating all your stats and your bios and all that stuff. I will say this. Let's go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. South Carolina did their due diligence on George Wilson. This is somebody they were very aware of. And when he entered the portal, they quickly, decisively made a move on him. And I think they're excited about the pickup. Are we going to use this to talk about to do our edge breakdown? Does that make sense,
I think
maybe?
that's a perfect transition. We've been doing our position group by position group, and edge is coming up next, which we'll do right after this break. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris, along with you on your Thursday here on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you on your Thursday here on the game. Reminder, Gamecock Baseball back in action tomorrow night taking on Kentucky. Your next chance to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. If you have not done already, go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win $250 tomorrow as the pot goes up by $25 each and every game. Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Of course, in the last segment, we talked about George Wilson, the newest addition to South Carolina's Edge room, and that leads us right into discussing that room as a whole as we go on our position previews post-spring as we look ahead to the 2025 season. Of course, goes without saying, Dylan Stewart, the unquestioned leader of that Edge room, much like Lenore Sellers was when we talked about quarterback yesterday, but kind of similar to quarterback. Okay, who's going to be that second guy? Obviously, at quarterback, you're talking about a backup. Second guy, you're talking about somebody on the opposite side of that line of scrimmage that hopefully can be productive. Maybe not to the level of Kyle Kennard, even though that would be great if they could be, but just somebody that can complement what Dylan Stewart does on that one side of the line.
Yeah, for sure. And that's been, I would say, one of the big conversations the entire offseason is, all right, Kyle Kennard's going to the NFL. Dylan Stewart is coming back. The Edge right now, can somebody else, whether it is a George Wilson, whether it's a Damon Clowney, a Dez can somebody else step up and take that spot from him? I think is the question. I don't know if Beamer would officially word it that way or not, but that's how I look at it. This is probably Brian Thomas Jr.'s job to lose. Can somebody else step in there and go make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, he's in his fourth year. Like, he checks a lot of the boxes. He's in his fourth year. The staff trusts him. He's played a lot of meaningful snaps. I mean, you look through his career, it's a guy that got on the field as a true freshman back in 2022. And so he's played in 32 games. He started 7 games. He's kind of been a part-time starter. Kind of consider him a co-starter at times during his career. And does he look like Kyle Kennard or Dylan Stewart? No, but he has put on a lot of weight. I mean, this is a kid, at least Wes and I saw him in camp, years ago at this point, and he was like 195 pounds. So now he's about 250. And, talking to him, we had him on the program a while back. He feels a lot stronger, feels like he plays the run a lot better. And to our point we were talking about in the last segment there, he credited Sterling Lucas a lot for his development as a player. So I think the theme of this room is, not just one guy, but they really need this whole room just to take that next step in their development. And so, yeah, it's about finding a starter. Somebody's going to win a starting job. But the other guys who get in there and play, you don't want Dylan Stewart or, let's say, Brian Thomas Jr.'s other guy. You don't want them taking 70 snaps a game. Who else can get in there and give you some quality run, whether it's in pass rush situations or just, hey, it's drive 4.
Yeah.
Against LSU. We need to do kind of a line change, so to speak. Get in there, give us some quality snaps.
And in this Edge room, you kind of have 3 different levels of guys. You have Stewart, Gear, Brian Thomas Jr. that have been here and obviously shown you their abilities on the field so far. You have kind of that next level with Carolina. You add in Jaylen Brown, who, of course, was out with an injury in the spring ball. And then you add in George Wilson now coming in out of Campbell out of the transfer portal that have upside and guys that have been around the game for a couple of years, whether here at South Carolina or somewhere else, but you're expecting them to kind of take that next step and maybe factor into being a little bit more in the rotation, and we'll see if they can do that. Then, of course, you have the guys coming in at freshman, Caleb Williams and Christian Ingram, who, if they can give you anything, that'd be fantastic, but you're not exactly counting on that because you have so much experience in that room already.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this group, to me, and this actually goes back to, I mentioned Carolina's roster, and he was like, hey, what's up with that Dez kid? And he's like, talk about looking the part. I mean, to me, and part of our conversation was who on the roster has an upside that we just haven't quite seen yet. And it was, well, hey, if Dez has the rest of the offseason that you want from him and kind of the switch gets flipped, so to speak, he could make all these conversations moot. Like, he's a guy, I mean, you go out there, you look at him.
Oh, yeah.
Physically. Yeah. I mean, if you walked up on the practice field, I mean, Dylan Stewart is like, I think, borderline a generational pass rusher. But if you just walked up on him, Des Yu is the first guy you notice in that defensive line room, in my opinion. Like, he physically is impressive. So could that start? We saw it a little bit in the spring game. He ran down a play, and then he was pumped up afterwards. I heard he had this is one day, but I heard he had a dominant practice towards the end of spring ball. And so can he start to stack days and take that big jump? If, we were talking about the defensive tackle room, and we were talking about earlier this year, what would be the one development that could go further for Carolina than about anything? We're talking about, well, what if Xavion Hardy just was a stud right off the bat? If Des Yu starts to kind of untap or tap into some of that potential, that would be a development that would be huge, I think.
Yeah, he's like one of those X Factor players, because, you're right. It struck me during the spring game, sitting up there in the box, and, it's a little later in the game, and you're looking down there, trying to figure out the personnel, and you're going, okay, there's Des Yu. He's 6'6", 255. Even just watching him move, too, he looks the part from that standpoint. And he's played – it's not like he has not played at all. He has played, yes, as a reserve, but I think he's played in, 24 games the past couple years. So he's played some special teams. He's played as a reserve in. Can he take the next step? And I think there are some indications that he's made some strides this spring. I think they are looking for him to take another step. And the good news is you have the summer to get stronger, which I think is a point of emphasis for him. And then you've got preseason camp. So, look, the more you're adding in more competition into this room via the portal. And we talk about this all the time with that receiver room. While you're not adding ultimately 6 new guys there, plus what you bring back, that's what you're doing in the receiver room. You are adding a couple more guys from the portal. Will that kind of help raise the level of this entire room, that competition level?
I have another X factor. So we look out there in the spring game, and you pointed this out, and then I started tracking it, following it after. Jaron Willis was playing stand-up edge rusher late in the spring game. And that's something, Jaron has always had pass rush ability. He's always been able to rush off the edge. We saw him doing that in that 3-3-5 look as the backup to Bam Martin-Scott basically 2 seasons ago. If you're Carolina and you're going, hey, we don't just have plug and play, shove another guy out there, not a huge drop-off like you did last year, we're going to have to match up. Do you potentially use a Jaron Willis, who is a linebacker by trade, but use him in that kind of stand-up edge role on third down pass rush situations? I think there's some value there to using him in that way. And he's a guy who can win one-on-one battles, got speed, can bend off the edge. And I think that's an intriguing possibility for that position.
There's your look at the edge room, and we'll again continue to go position group by position group as we assess where they stand post spring practice. Coming up next, we'll dive back into the NFL draft. Let's hear a little bit of what Nicky Morey had to say to Jay and Elijah yesterday on the postgame show as he hopes to hear his name called a little bit later on tonight in the first round of the NFL draft. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris, along with you on your Thursday here on the game.
Got a little news about Firehouse Subs, y'all. Got another live show scheduled. It's going to be next Wednesday, and that's April 30th. I'm not the greatest with dates, but I'm looking at my calendar. April 30th, 9 to noon. Store will open at 10, and we will be out at the Forest Drive location for Firehouse Subs. So if you are a calendar person, go ahead and mark yours. April 30th, that's a Wednesday. Come on out about 10 to noon. We'll be hanging out. We'll be doing some giveaways. We'll be doing the show from there, and we'll also be eating some Firehouse subs, which is my, honestly, favorite part of the show. You can come out and join us. If you can't wait until then, if you're hungry for lunch, for dinner, if you're thinking about placing a catering order and need somewhere, we're going to recommend our friends over at Firehouse Subs. All your favorites, plus the new Zesty Garlic Hook and Ladder and Spicy Dill Hook and Ladder, available for a limited time only. 15 locations, including Forest Drive, all around the Midlands. Pickup orders or delivery orders are available. FirehouseSubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app today.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game. And today, of course, is the first round of the NFL Draft where, once again, expect to hear the sound a lot over the next 3 days. That'll get rolling tonight at 8 o'clock as we'll see likely Cam Ward go off the board first. And we're anticipating to hear Nicky Memori's name before the night is out, going somewhere mid to late first round. We talked about that with Will Helms in the last hour about his thoughts and where Nick may end up going. And I want to dive into a little bit of what he had to talk about yesterday with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show, in particular his development here at South Carolina. We're going to listen to what he said, and then I want you guys to give your perspective on your awareness of Nick and obviously what you've seen out of him in his time here at South Carolina. Here's Nick talking about how he developed here at South Carolina.
Honestly, man, it was just a perfect storm brewing in Columbia, especially at the perfect time when I came through there. I owe a lot of thanks to Coach Beamer, Coach White, and Coach Gray, who had a lot of stuff to do with that, and even the strength staff. They had a lot of stuff to do with my development at South Carolina. Just like you said, Ohio State's probably gonna have better dudes year after year, but at South Carolina, you got to get it out the mud, man. As they say, you got to really grind at South Carolina, put all your chips forward, especially from where I came from. South Carolina was my only Power 5 offer, so I didn't really have, everything how these other 5-star kids had. So I had to really get out the mud. No one really knew my name. Even when I committed to South Carolina, I was kind of under the radar. A lot of people were speculating. I remember a couple of dudes was why we keep getting 3-star recruits? He's not going to help us. I just remember all this stuff back then, but honestly, man, that's just like you said, at South Carolina, if I was at Georgia or Alabama, it would be no question I'd be a first-round lock, no question. No one's questioning anything. No one's thinking about it twice. But at South Carolina, man, you got to get a little different, man. You got to get it out the mud. Got to grind a little harder. So it makes it better knowing I did all that, coming from where I came from, Irmo High School, 15 minutes up the road, 3-star recruit. Only one Power 5 offered a first-round pick or a potential first-round pick. Man, it's pretty awesome, and it shows a lot for what Coach Beamer has done. So,
and he brings up that point because it's been interesting to see now that he's gone through the combine, and we know he's pretty much a lock to be a first-rounder coming up tonight. Some of the people are like, man, where did this dude come from? Why didn't we hear about more coming out of high school? And you guys can speak to this better than anyone. He was kind of overlooked in a lot of ways. Came to South Carolina, wowed everybody, and they tried to lock him up as quickly as they could.
Yeah, they did, and he, like I talked about during the Gamecock Club Hour, he had a showing at South Carolina's camp that obviously on a little bit different scale because you're talking about a high school kid at that point, had not gone through SEC strength and conditioning yet at South Carolina, but he had a similar day in terms of just wowing everybody at that camp at South Carolina. I think they already sort of had, I guess, maybe circled the name, so, hey, let's watch this guy today, and he just completely blew it up. And so that was impressive. I think a lot of people at South Carolina kind of knew on that day, hey, we found a steal. Let's get this guy locked in. And he did become a high-value target for them right off the bat. So it was just interesting. The word just never completely, I think, got out there about Nick somehow, some way. But I don't think – I promise you Clayton White was not sitting there going – this guy is a 3-star type addition. South Carolina's staff was very excited to have him. And, hey, let's show some love, as we always do every chance we get, to our guy Charles Power. Nick Gee was a 4-star prospect, according to Charles. So, yes, the industry as a whole had him more as a 3-star guy. But you can go back and look. I had somebody on staff basically dispute me on that. And I said, go back and look. He was a 4-star guy, according to one service, and that was Charles Power of On 3.
Yeah, it's a trust your eyes situation. And looking back on it, it is really bizarre because, if you went to watch Nick play in Irmo, if you looked at his stats, if you watched him in camp, just watch his film, it's what am I missing type of thing here, because you got this big kid. It especially looks even more ridiculous now where he went and was the top safety at the NFL Combine in every category, but also not just a workout warrior. He had the production in college from his freshman year on, all 3 years. He had the production in high school. Nick still has, and I really, if we get to talk to his high school coach, Aaron Brand from Irmo, at some point soon, I'm going to ask him about this and, frankly, even challenge him a little bit on it. Nick's tackling stats from his senior year, do y'all know? Do y'all have a guess how many tackles he had?
No, I do not.
That was 200.
Did 232 tackles between assists and solo tackles. That's insane. And even there's no way. Okay, cut it in half. Still impressive, right? And I remember, Brand telling me when he was getting recruited, nobody outjumps Nick Eamon-Wari. You go, ooh, that's impressive because he's already big. I think the play that sealed the deal for the staff back when he was getting recruited, we were out there at camp, and you already had heard that he ran well. You watched him. He looked great. There was a one-on-one play where he just jumped up, probably whatever he jumped at the combine, 40-something inches, snagged an interception, and I saw the reaction from Clayton White and Torian Gray after that, and it was like, this is over. You know, we got to get this kid. And it's an example of, you know, you trust your eyes, and it worked out, and he certainly developed here. He gave kudos to the staff and to Luke Day and his staff. Everybody had a hand in it. Nick obviously had a huge hand in it with just his God-given ability and how hard he worked here.
And he was a guy that, again, found the field very quickly, a couple snaps into the Georgia State game back in 2022, and never really left the field. And it was almost kind of like baptism by fire, but he was able to get out there and obviously come into his own to where by the time his college career was over, legitimately, again, one of the better, if not the best guy at his position, and we expect to hear him be the first safety off the board coming up tonight.
I readily admit that we don't bat 1,000 on these because sometimes a guy creates early buzz when they arrive on campus, and then it just sort of fades away. But Nick was the first name you started hearing that summer. You started talking to people, hey, who's caught your eye in winter or be summer workouts at that point? Because Nick was not an early enrollee is the other crazy part. Almost all these guys these days have an entire spring semester to get acclimated. Nick was playing on the 8th snap of the season and had not gone through spring ball. He was a traditional summer enrollee at South Carolina. But I remember, this was a couple of weeks into workouts, you already started to hear, hey, this Nick E guy is just built different. He's special in the weight program. He's special in the way he moves. And then he obviously converted that onto the field as well. So I'm excited to see where he goes. I'm hoping it's somewhere that has some talent around him on defense and somewhere that has a creative defensive coordinator, because there's a lot you can do with this kid, even at the NFL level. His skill set is diverse. It's vast. And you can use him playing center field. You can use him near the line of scrimmage. You can use him as a pass rusher. He's a guy that can pretty much do everything.
Yeah, he can do it all. And, there have been players similar to him that have had success at the NFL level. You think of Chancellor, right? Like some bigger safety types. But when you look at Nick, he really is. I had someone say to me this week that, there's no such thing as a unicorn. That's why they're a mythical figure. But if you do believe in him, like Nick's about as close as you're going to get, because guys that are as big as him aren't supposed to be able to move that well. And again, I go back to the point, like the numbers, the testing numbers are obviously eye-popping, but he also has the tape to match it, to where you feel like, can he cover man-to-man? Yes. Can he play center field like Wes said? Yes. Can he come and run the alleys and play the run well? Yes, he can do all those things. So that's why we're going into tonight, and he's very likely going to be a first-round pick.
We'll come back, wrap up the hour, talk some more NFL drafts so you get set for the first round coming up tonight. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Minor Gamecock baseball back in action, taking on Kentucky. 6:30 tomorrow night, 4:30 on Saturday, and then 1 o'clock on Sunday. All you can listen to here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, as well as 100.3 The Game out in Myrtle Beach as Coach Maneri's team tries to stay alive in their hunt for the postseason. Again, Nicky Minwari, expect to hear his name called coming up tonight. I know early on in the draft process there were some rumblings that maybe TJ Sanders could work his way into the first round. That doesn't seem likely to be the case coming up tonight for a guy like that who could potentially be a second rounder or a third rounder. It's going to be interesting to see tonight which teams go with defensive tackles and which teams may still be in the market as they get into those next couple rounds, as we do kind of anticipate he's likely to be the next guy off the board for South Carolina.
Yeah, is that consensus out there? I feel like that's probably going to be the case as TJ is next. I kind of thought at the end of the season, maybe Kyle Kennard is in that spot. But the more you've kind of heard and the more that's out there, certainly seems like TJ is next. After him, is it Kyle? I tend to think it might be D. Knight who goes third. And, I know Mike Uva has a very extensive NFL draft guide there on Gamecock Central, but when you start getting into that second round, third round, I mean, it's a crapshoot in terms of trying to project who goes where and how high they go. I think it's fascinating. I'll go back to like a year ago plus a little bit of time, like last summer, people were telling us like, hey, this D. Knight kid, he's going to be a mid-round NFL draft pick. And I was kind of going, that's a little bit of an aggressive projection. And then what happens? He goes out there and he does it. So huge couple of days for these guys. Just very honestly, you get to know them even just a little bit. Excited for all of them. I remember interviewing TJ Sanders when South Carolina had first offered him. And he, you want to talk about Nick being under the radar. Dude, TJ Sanders was, below the radar when he got offered. And but even then, people were going, man, this guy's got something about him. And I believe that was like a Drew Hughes offer back then, who was South Carolina's director of player personnel way back when toward the end of the Muschamp era. And so fun to see these guys have a dream come true, hopefully, in the next few days.
Yeah, TJ was definitely, Tennessee, it's kind of like Xavier Legette from kind of similar area. And you had like Tennessee and South Carolina were kind of the main two schools. And you just remember hearing about TJ, what a good, high school basketball player he was. You see this a lot. When you take guys with traits in high school, even if they're not big names, a lot of times if you've got a really good development program and the prospects themselves, put in the work and stick around and develop, this is what you get, So I do think it's obvious that Nick's coming off the board first unless something absolutely crazy happens. That's what it's going to be. I still have a question of who it's going to be next. I do think it is between Kennard and TJ Sanders. I don't know if there's a consensus on it. I think from what I've been given by some people who follow this kind of thing and are kind of in the mix there, it seems like they're in similar ranges, right, where they could both go in the second round, they could both go in the third. If something happened, maybe they could slip down, but it kind of seems like rounds 2 or 3 for those guys. I did have somebody tell me the other day, like, from a talent perspective, TJ is like a first-round type talent. Like, he's potentially that good, but there's a little bit of depth to the D-line class, so it might not get there for him. I think if you're, wagering in your mind on it, you expect maybe 2, 3 for those guys.
We talked with Will Helms earlier on in the morning, and we asked him the question at the end of our time with him of how many Gamecocks he thought could potentially be drafted this weekend. He threw out there 8. Obviously, the record is 7, set back in 2009 and 2013. And, again, you kind of have about those 4 to 5 guys that you know for sure are going to be drafted in those higher rounds. The question becomes, okay, as you get into the 7th round and stuff like that, a Simpkins, Bam Martin Scott, Debo Williams, could these guys find their way in, or are they going to drop down to being undrafted free agents, which, as we've talked about a lot, it almost kind of works out better sometimes when you are an undrafted free agent. You can kind of choose what situation you go into and competition you enter and all those kind of things. But for the sake of the quality of the class overall for South Carolina, if they could get to 8, it would set a record for the program.
What does Kai Kroger get drafted?
He did mention Kai Kroger. He felt like he was going to get drafted as well.
Yeah, and I think Kai's going to have a shot somewhere. We know it's just, is it going to be one of those UDFA situations, or is it he gets picked in 7th round or something like that? Is there any value to a team to drafting a guy that has some ability to do fakes at a high level for you? I don't know. Do teams care about that, or is it more just like, all right, you're a punter, let me go get the best punter? Well, Kyle might also be the best punter as well. So I think there are some things that maybe play into his favor. There's always, I feel like when we follow this stuff here locally, there's always a guy that maybe goes just a little bit like a nudge higher than you expect. And there's always a guy, it seems like, that starts that free fall and goes later than you expect. I think we all thought Spencer would have been off the board a little bit quicker this time last year, and it just did. Especially, you had the run of quarterbacks in the first round. You're going, this is setting up perfectly for him, and then it didn't happen. So who gets caught up in a wave like that or something, we'll see. And then who maybe is in a situation where they go a little bit higher than we suspect.
Well, and to since you mentioned Spencer, one of the storylines going into this draft is what will the Saints do with their first-round pick?
Yep.
Spencer Rattler, a guy that a lot of people are looking at, could he be the starter or at least challenge? He'll at least challenge for it, I would say. But that position's kind of in flux. So a lot of talk about them maybe addressing the quarterback position in the first round. For what it's worth, Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network has them taking Michael Williams of Georgia, who is not a quarterback. He is an edge. Thinks they may address that in the second round. So just kind of another mini storyline there. The Saints will probably address quarterback through the draft, but when, I think, is a question there.
Yeah, because Derek Carr is still dealing with the injuries, and obviously, he's getting up there in age, been around the NFL for a long time. And, again, unfortunately, Rattler's starts last year didn't go that well. And, again, there's a lot of factors there. Offensive line wasn't good, didn't have much talent around him.
You could have had,
yeah.
Who? John Elway?
Yeah. Yeah, anybody would struggle there. I think
Patrick
Olave.
Mahomes.
I think Olave was hurt as well, so didn't have his weapons around him either. He was not put in a good situation to succeed, to say the least.
Yeah, Josh Allen could have been out there, and it would have been the same story. So hopefully their people noticed that.
I saw one national sports writer. I don't see what the Saints saw in Spencer Rattler. I'm like, do you watch the game? Like, have you watched it? He is. That team is not in a good spot. So they need a lot of help, not just the quarterback.
They do, but again, that is a storyline to follow coming up tonight and throughout the rest of the draft. And we'll certainly talk about that again. Expecting to hear Nicky Mawarri's name called tonight, and we'll react to where he ends up coming up tomorrow. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming next, halftime show. Myself, Terry Ford, on your Thursday here on the Game.